Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode and edition of Derek's Travel Chats for January 28th. I'm Derek Windsor, your host and the show, and I own and operate E&B Travel Services here in St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. This show is all about sharing of information about travel and what you can expect in this world for travel, both during and post-pandemic. So over the last 7 months, we've chatted with all kinds of top executives of travel companies here in Canada and some of the leaders of the industry. Today, we're going to take a little different approach and look at travel from a different perspective. Today, my guest is a young man from the UK, living in London right now. And he began a podcast back in January called The Worst Traveler. And I know the name sounds as if it's going to be all bad news, but it's actually quite interesting. He has over 50 podcasts online under the name The Worst Traveler, and talks about different parts of his travel experience, and has been speaking with other people who travel and pass on their experience. So it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Page, the host of the Worst Traveler podcast. So welcome, Tom, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Derek. I'm excited. You're the very first person I've met from Newfoundland, so this is great.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. And just so the viewers know, I actually, found this whole new TikTok social media craze and was thumbing through, and Tom was doing a live there, and I listened into what he had to say and was very intrigued, but one, by the name of his TikTok name, and then to hear him sharing stories and find out about his podcast. So I invited Tom to come on the show to share some of his stories and experiences and some of the conversations he's had with people around the world during this pandemic. So hopefully people will enjoy the show. And I know I find your experiences very interesting, and have been listening to a lot of your podcasts. So hopefully
there's been some good experiences, there's been some good, some very bad ones as well. But yeah, I enjoy talking about it, and hopefully people do as well.
So Tom, I mean, what possessed you to be able to want to get into the podcast and specifically talk about travel?
So travel was always something that I was interested in, and I think there's this big stigma in maybe UK culture that people who walk and talk like me go travel and they go and find themselves in India, things like that. And I kind of thought, oh yeah, I did do something like that, so maybe people think that of me. And I often found when talking about travel to people at, I don't know, evenings or parties or like went out to dinner with someone, people would be like, oh, you're talking about travel again, and that kind of thing. So I kind of thought, why not? Actually, I'm going to stop talking about it to people, and I'm going to put it in podcast format so they can come and go if they're interested. And I've been doing it for about a year now, so a year in February, and it's really good fun. So I've gone from doing a podcast to doing a blog and to doing TikTok as well at the beginning of this year, which is a strange platform, but it's good.
It was, I know you have a whole different bunch of different types of topics, but your first podcast was the one that I guess really intrigued me the most, where you talked about your trip to Dubai, or not Dubai, sorry, to India, and how you did that. And I wonder if you could share that story, some of that story with our listeners today.
Of course, yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, this is this thing here. I don't know if it's there or there or wherever you're looking, but yeah, this is my podcast, The Worst Traveler. And so in 2017, I decided to go on this one-way trip, and there's me in the airport. This is in Dubai, so you were right, Derek. So I went on my 21st birthday to Dubai with my family, and I'd always wanted to go traveling, wanted to pursue traveling. And I was in a long-term relationship at the time, and I was at university. And as a result of, I hate saying fixed, but it kind of was. As a result of being in that environment, I never got a chance to go out and explore and do what I wanted to do. when I was like 18, 19, when all of my friends were going off and going around Asia and going to Australia and that. And I kind of thought, do you know what? I'd love to go and do that myself. So it got late one January. I broke up with this girlfriend after 4 years. I quit university the next day. The day after that, I booked a one-way ticket to India, just as like I'm going to give it a go moment. And then the day after that, I became vegetarian, but that only lasted 3 weeks because I ate chicken wings and forgot. But that's another story. And so as a result of booking that one-way ticket, I was completely on my own. I had a 12-month visa, and saying goodbye to my parents at the airport was like scary because I didn't know where I was going to be that evening, next week, in a year's time. I had no idea. I had no idea when I was going to see them again. And but I kind of thought I'd give it a go. This is kind of my moment, I suppose. It sounds silly, but I just wanted to have a go and put myself in a challenging situation in a country that I'd never heard of before, and just to give it a go and see how I cope. And so I went on this trip to Mumbai, and what you can see here in this photo, the shirt that I'm wearing, the trousers, you can't see the shoes, but I'm wearing flip-flops. And you see that I have no bags, and that you may think, oh yeah, my luggage is kind of getting put on the plane at the moment. But no, I traveled around India with no bags, no luggage, just my phone that you can see there. In this pocket at the bottom, I had my phone charger. In another one, I had my wallet, and the other one, I had my passport. And that was all I traveled around with for a month. And it kind of got me into some tricky situations, which is another one of the reasons why I started this podcast, The Worst Traveler. And I arrived in Mumbai with nowhere to stay that night. And so I was wandering around for ages, eventually got found somewhere by by fortune, I suppose, because this guy had come up to me, saw that I was kind of struggling, just wandering around, being lost essentially. And he led me down a few kind of alleyways to this hotel that I'm pretty sure his friend worked at, and he got a big commission. The hotel wasn't very nice, so I wanted to get out of there. And I found this beach. It was called Chowpatty. It's in southern Mumbai. And I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk in the evening just to kind of clear my head. I have somewhere now so I can relax. And as I was walking along this beach, I saw this group of kids playing football or soccer, because we were saying earlier on. And I kind of thought, that looks a lot of fun. Like I'm a big fan of football, but I cannot go and play with them as much as I want to. And then I kind of thought, you know what? Why not? I'm completely on my own, and I need to kind of not necessarily make friends at some point, but I need to communicate with people. Otherwise, I'm just going to be lonely, you know? And so I walked up to these guys, and they were maybe like 14, 15. I don't know exactly how old they were. And they all kind of stopped playing as I walked over. And I remember asking if I could play. And they were like, David Beckham. And it wasn't, I'm no David Beckham. I am awful at football, but I kind of thought, you know what? Yeah, I'll play along with this. And I'll be like, oh yeah, let's play. And we played for about an hour and a half. And this white shirt here that looks very clean and tidy, that evening looked like this. So you can see kind of at the bottom, like it was covered in, it looks like mud, but that's the sand. And essentially, after playing football, they wanted to play this game called Kabaddi, which is
like a dodgeball, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like dodgeball, but without the ball. So instead of a ball, you're using people. So you went on two sides, and basically the kids were they didn't necessarily want to play this, but some really, really were up for it. And those were the people that wanted me on their team. So basically one would run to the other side. So you have like the line in dodgeball, and you try and grab someone and pull them back over to your side without getting pinned down whilst on the other side. It's a confusing game, but it is just essentially a game of violence. And as you can see, I ended up getting pretty muddy. And I kind of felt bad doing it because obviously you can see these kids are like half my height. I'm 6'4". Like it's not a good mix. And I remember locals kind of lining up along the edge of the beach on like the road, and just watching and laughing at me, not with me. It was it was good fun. But yeah, those were the kids I met on my first night in India. And then kind of it went on from there, really, just hopefully meeting people every night, never booking accommodation the the night after, and always trying to find somewhere as a result, which, like I say, it led to some interesting stories.
I know also in your podcast, you talked about some of the experience in that hotel for the first night. Probably not the most pleasant ones, but something that I'm assuming would change your perspective on looking for accommodation.
Yeah, I mean, I never really kind of had perceptions of what I was going into. When I go away places, I like to kind of have an open mind and not kind of cast an opinion on something. But yeah, so I stayed in a hotel for the first night, and in hindsight, I should have booked somewhere, but I decided not to. And as a result, the place was tiny. It was almost like in a lift shaft, and there was no windows, and it was just a tiny little box room, maybe like 2 meters by 2 meters, with a bed kind of squeezed in the corner. And I remember the bed itself, like the mattress was almost like a block of wood. There was an ensuite, but it wasn't an ensuite. It was just this little room with a small hole in the ground with loads of flies everywhere. And like, although I kind of, at the time, I was dreading going to sleep that night, but thinking about it now, I wish I'd have spent more. It sounds weird saying this. I wish I'd have spent more time in there, because it was it was a real interesting experience. And in hindsight, I'd like to do it again, but I also wouldn't. But yeah, and after that, I just stayed in hostels. So, which I think is the best way to meet people when traveling. Like, you're forced to kind of talk with people in the way. You're in a room with 6 other people who are, I don't know, doing the same journey as you, or the complete opposite, and you kind of mix and share stories and hear great places to go as a result. Yeah.
I know in one of your podcasts as well, you introduced a part of your podcast as the hostel guest or the hostel person.
Hostel person of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the unique people that you met?
Of course, yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, I have this in the podcast, The Worst Traveler. I have this, a segment, I suppose, that I sometimes do. I haven't done it in a while, but it's it's called Hostel Person of the Week, and essentially it is where I look at someone in kind of profile who I've met in a hostel around the world. And one in India, like on my second day, actually, the day after this, I met this guy called Ollie, who was a British guy as well, and he was walking the length of India. And I was just in awe of what he was doing. Like, I cannot believe he's not as kind of high profile as he is. He was such an interesting guy and doing the most incredible journey. So going from the very, very top tip of northern India all the way down to the south in a place called Kanyakumari. And I met him in a hostel, and we're still friends now. Like, I've spoke to him on my podcast. We've met up a couple of times since. And yeah, those are the kind of like positive hostel experiences that I've had. But then also you get some negative ones as well. And as a result of traveling with 6 people, in a room with 6 people, you're going to kind of get some potentially dodgy people. I don't know how to say it, but I met this one guy in a hostel in Estonia, and he he kept me up the night before. Essentially, I'd never met him before, but he kept me up by snoring, which is a common thing. People do it. I do it. But this snoring was very loud, and it was even throughout the day. And I remember getting back on my second night and just sitting up on the top bunk, and realized that, oh, it's gone, that's right. And realized that he'd gone. So I was like, oh, fantastic. And then within like 5 minutes of sitting down and kind of relaxing, he walked back in, and it was this this Irish guy. I won't say his name, but he started speaking to me, and he had this bottle of vodka in his hand, and like this, I remember quite vividly, he had this like bright red t-shirt on, and I don't think any trousers. But he just started kind of talking to me, asking me what I was doing, what was going on. And I had a chat with him. He told me that he'd been living in Estonia for a little while. And I was kind of asking him for tips, like where's cool to go to. And he was saying, you should go to Latvia, which is the country just south of Estonia. And I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I'll look at that for another time. And he was like, oh, no, let's go tomorrow. And I was kind of like, okay, I've come to Estonia to see Estonia, not go to Latvia, but I'll hear what you're going to say. And he was saying, it's only 4 hours away on the bus. So why not book it now, and we'll go tomorrow. And I was kind of like, oh, can you help me? And he said no. He didn't want to kind of help me book it because he was about to go on a Tinder date with this woman from Guatemala, apparently. And as a result, he was offering me this vodka that he kind of been, I suppose, drinking for Dutch courage. And I ended up booking this this bus to go with this guy who I just met once he left. And so I had like a 6 o'clock. I had to be at the bus station for 6 o'clock in the morning or something. So I'd arrive in Latvia at 10 a.m. And I woke up at like, I don't know, 5 o'clock, 5:30, and came down, saw that Daniel was asleep. So I kind of woke him up saying, oh, Daniel, I've said his name. I realized that I wasn't going to say his name, but we know he's called Daniel now, and he's from Ireland. And I remember shaking him and waking him up and being like, hey, come on, what's going on? Are we going to Latvia still? And I think it might have been the vodka. I don't know, it might have been he had a bad date, but he just was in complete denial of knowing me and telling me about Latvia. So I ended up going to Riga, the capital, on my own at 6 o'clock in the morning in the dark, on just I suppose, a spontaneous trip, which ended up being quite good fun. But I suppose it's one of those things where you realize not everyone in hostels is trying to help you. They're just trying to kind of set you up to set you up to go to some different places, I suppose. But I had a fantastic time. I met someone in Latvia who I didn't know beforehand. I just met them through Instagram. And as a result, still friends now, which is fortunate, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I've always, even as many years ago, long before internet and all of that, I always thought about, backpacking in different parts of the world, and I never ever did get to do it. And I mean, I'm 62 years of age now, probably a bit too old to be doing that kind of stuff, but it's still something I'd like to be able to do. I don't know if I would be able to do a shirt, a pair of pants, and phone, and whatever like you did. I think I'd need probably a little bit more material with me, but I think it's an experience that a lot of people should be able to have. You also, I understand your mother now lives in Canada, so you've had an opportunity to visit one part of Canada, probably not the best part of Canada yet.
So yeah,
my invitation is out to you now, that before you fly to Alberta, that you drop down into Newfoundland and you get to see what paradise is all about.
Thank you very much. Well, yeah, my mum lives in Alberta, in southeast Alberta, and that's the only part of Canada I've ever been to. But yeah, Newfoundland, I've heard that. I was looking it up the other day when we got in contact, Derek, and I've heard that you've got snow, like there's storms going on at the moment, which doesn't seem too attractive. I mean, we get snow here in the UK and everything shuts down, but that's like this much.
Yeah, well, we had 35 centimeters last weekend.
No way, I don't think we get that in like 10 years.
And this time last year, we were actually shut down for 8 days because we had 95 centimeters over a 24-hour period.
Wow, that's
very unusual for us here too. I don't want to make it sound like we're blocked in all the time. Up to the time we had the 35 centimeters, the day before we probably had 10 or 12 degrees Celsius. So it's a very fluctuating climate here. But during the summertime, I mean, you would I know, being, and especially if you're like to hike and whatever, there's so much to do here in Newfoundland. So again, the invitation is for the worst traveler to come to Newfoundland, and
I'd love to. That'd be amazing. Thank you.
And some of your broadcasts, you talk about LA, and I know it's on your webpage as well. You got pointers about visiting LA and that kind of stuff. So how do you organize yourself within, to put all that together?
In terms of like booking trips, do you mean? Like how do I decide where to go?
Yeah, how do you plan what you're going to do? Because my whole point of having you on is that there's all kinds of different ways of travel. I mean, as a travel agent, I'm putting everything together, and I acknowledge that there's people out there like yourself who are spontaneous and want to be able to go and just do what you want to do. But everything does take a little bit of planning. So how do you put your mind around that?
Of course, yeah. No, I mean, I kind of talk about like spontaneity and yeah, doing things on a whim, but there is definitely planning there in terms of like knowing a little bit about a country. I think it's kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily respectful to go somewhere not knowing about it and just kind of expecting to kind of see what's going on. So yeah, I'll always do kind of a bit of research into necessarily like history and culture and I suppose like TripAdvisor top 10 things to do because I suppose they're top for a reason. And so yeah, wherever I go, whether it be where my mum is in Alberta or to Calgary, I'd always kind of do a bit of research, whether that is through Instagram, so doing like a little location search on what is interesting. So say Calgary, for example, I'd put that in like, I don't know, hashtag Calgary or something, or just the word. And you may get pictures of, is it the Sky Tower? You may get pictures of the flames coming up. And yeah, I kind of, as a result, just plan a trip through that. So if I see something that looks really cool, I'll then go and do a bit more research on it. I didn't get to see a Flames game when I was there, but I bought the jersey. I don't know where it is. It's in my room somewhere. But yeah, I'm an honorary Calgary Flames fan.
Well, it's interesting you should mention that because actually I have a cousin who lives in Alberta and he actually plays for the Flames.
No way.
He was drafted by them. Now he plays for their farm team right now, but yeah, he's actually employed by the Flames organization. Yeah,
that's amazing. That's really cool.
And he's about your age actually. Right?
Yeah.
He just came out of junior, so he would be around 22 years of age. Right?
Amazing. I don't know if I would have. Like I said, I didn't go and see a game, but I went into all the shops and had a look at the names on the back of the jerseys and everything. My one is nameless, but yeah, that's really cool.
Matthew Phillips is his name.
Nice. I'll look it up. I'll make a note. He could be my favorite player. That's the only one I know.
But while you're in visiting your mother, you also told a story about going across the border into Montana.
Yeah, I've actually got a picture of Montana. I'll show you that. Yeah, Montana's a beautiful, beautiful state. I again didn't really know much about it before. There's the picture again. Oh, there's me at the Taj Mahal. That was that was one I suppose that I looked up. And then actually I'll tell the story quickly. Yeah, so when you go to the Taj Mahal, there's so many things online that say, oh yeah, we are the best tour guides. But actually going there, you're going to get so many people who come up and offer like the independent kind of experience. So I got a tour guide. I paid him like cash right there, and obviously that goes, I suppose, directly to him as opposed to through someone else. But yeah, Taj Mahal, beautiful place. But here's Montana. Well, there's me sitting on a road in Montana. So yeah, I went to. So my mum is in southeast Alberta, and I am obsessed with like road trips and everything like that. I suppose kind of big wide open spaces. And I mean, we hear about that in the UK. We hear about yeah, we hear about these kind of big skies in like North America. And doing that road trip, I kind of really got the sense that that is true. Kind of driving out of Alberta and then along like these silent roads in Montana. It's such a beautiful continent, I suppose, for that. And I had no plan on where I was going to go at all. Like I had no idea. All I knew that I wanted to see bears. Okay, and bears are my favorite animal, and I really wanted to see some in Canada. So we went to Banff, and I was unlucky. We didn't see any then. Actually, Banff came after, but yeah, and so I wanted to go to this place called East Glacier National Park, which is where I heard there was bears. And I say I wanted to go there. I only found out that I wanted to go there on the journey. So once I crossed the border into the US, I met this. I went to this petrol station, gas station, I suppose you'd call it, and they it was like a small town, I suppose. It is the exact kind of thing that we as Brits see in, I don't know, like old-fashioned American road trip films, where it's just like there's a couple of shops and a gas station on this kind of road, and then there's nothing for miles and miles and miles. And yeah, I remember this woman who was just speaking to me outside as I kind of came out, and she was I was telling her that I really wanted to see bears, and she was like, "You're probably not going to, but head east, and you're going to come to this place called East Glacier National Park." And that's what I did. I just kept driving and driving and driving. I did 5 hours there, and then 5 hours back, with about an hour kind of breaks and like Walmart food stops and things like that. But yeah, I just kept driving until I arrived at this national park, and it started snowing, so that meant I had to turn around because I had to be back that night for dinner dinner in Southeast Alberta. But yeah, I love that kind of that road trip experience. And again, that wasn't planned. I mean, obviously I had a car already. I hired a car to kind of get around the town and the city, but yeah, just did that on a whim. But yeah, do you have bears in Newfoundland?
We had black bears.
Black bears, yeah, that sold it to me.
Yeah, there's black bears here in Newfoundland. There's no grizzly bear or anything, but there's black bear.
Are
Mostly,
they common?
yeah, most in the central part of the island, they are. There's ways of being able to see them and find them. Usually go to the local dump, but
That's where they hang out. Yeah.
so yeah. So if you come, there's ways of seeing bears, moose, icebergs, and whales. So,
Wow.
but it depends on what time of year you come here. So,
Of course, yeah.
if you come here in June, you'll see the whales and the icebergs. And whales are around mostly during the summer, but by mid-August they'll probably disappear and go back south again. And the icebergs will disappear probably last week of June, depending on the flow of the water, the Gulf Stream, and so on. Right?
Yeah.
You've spent some time in Australia.
Yeah. So after India, I went and again, I didn't really have a plan of what I was doing. I had a year visa in Australia, just to work as well. So it was a working holiday one. And yeah, I ended up living in Sydney for like nearly half a year, which was which was great. Like again, didn't really know what I was going to do when I was there, but knew someone in Sydney, which was lucky. Was able to stay with them for the first week, and then yeah, was on my own, which was interesting. Like I wasn't in the nicest place. It was just this kind of one bedroom. Well, it wasn't even. It was just like this room in above a pub, and it was great. Like I had the best time living over there, and yeah, I'd love to go back. You can never spend like too much time in Australia. There's always more to do. I suppose in Canada as well. It's such a vast country that there's always going to be more to see, more to do, to go again. You know.
So Tom, do you in your travels, I mean, a lot of people I know who've done backpacking will do hobble jobs for people or pick up, will be waiters or cooks and to help finance. Do you do anything like that? Or
Yeah, I mean, sometimes visas make it quite tricky. But yeah, certainly in Australia, like just to kind of earn, because that was like my biggest trip, I suppose. Because I've been working for like 3 years before, I had a little bit saved up. But yeah, once I got to the country, like because it's a high cost of living in Australia, but as a result, the wages are higher as well compared to the UK. So yeah, I worked in a bar job, which is just kind of gets you by. It was great. Met some amazing people, fellow travelers as well. It's quite a common thing to do for, I suppose, people doing a similar trip to me, just working in a bar, passing the evenings, and then going out and exploring during the day. But yeah, I've met people who have done all kinds of fruit picking jobs and everything like to do with agriculture and all sorts.
So you've been doing the podcast. You've been having guests now on your podcast talking about different parts of travel, different ways of travel. What's your sense of how travel will look post-pandemic? What are you hearing from people, and their concern? Are people concerned about post-travel after pandemic, or what kind of things are you hearing through your podcast?
I suppose people who I spoke to, so I normally speak to kind of like travel bloggers and people who like travel is their full-time job, which is amazing. Like I suppose that's what loads of people want, whether it's to do a job in travel or a job to do with something completely different that enables you to travel. But yeah, in terms of that, obviously some people's careers are being crippled by it, but worse things happen, you know. In terms of what they think will happen afterwards, and what I think, I mean, I really enjoy traveling the way I do, and that is not necessarily slowly, but kind of exploring places and staying in hostels. And I think it will be a long time before that is at where it was, I suppose, because hostels, I suppose, are going to be hit hard because there's going to be all sorts of regulations. This is just speculation, of course, but yeah, and I think as a result of that, those places, those hostels that are independently run by locals, are going to need the support. So I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but yeah, it's a difficult one because obviously I I don't know.
No, and
But
I don't think anyone really knows, but
of course,
having those, I found out through conversations with, some of the executives of, larger companies and that kind of stuff, and some hotel chains and whatever. I mean, people are wanting to be positive about the future and
mm,
know that people will be moving around the world again at some point. So, uh, for me, I'm just waiting for that day that everyone is going to say, let's get on the go, let's go to a beach, let's go walk the streets of Europe, let's wherever it might be. uh,
absolutely.
and as a person who assists people with, hopefully that time will be sometime soon. But given the way the vaccines are being very slowly put out, and people are hesitant, and governments are hesitant about people moving, it might be 2022 before you start seeing some of that. So,
Yeah, I suppose one thing that I have kind of noticed, and yeah, kind of going on that, like, yeah, possibly 2022 thing. It At the start of it, say like March, April time, everyone was saying, "Oh my God, we're never going to be able to travel again because all the airlines are going to hike up the prices because they need to get some money back." But I think it's almost been like the opposite. Well, in terms of like, they haven't gone up because they've pretty much stayed exactly the same as they are. Like if I were to look in on flight prices now on Skyscanner or something for, I don't know, December, um, they're exactly the same as they were, if not maybe slightly cheaper, because the airlines need to get money back. And as a result of people potentially losing money through this time, no one has a lot of money to spend. So they need to kind of knock their prices down a bit to kind of recover. So I think travel will be back, and I don't think it's going to be more expensive than it was before. Let's say that possibly.
well, if you see that nice web page right across my drop back there,
Mm,
that's always a place you can go to book your flights to.
nice.
Last, before we close off, Tom, and I really appreciate you being on here today. Everybody has a bucket list, and I know you have a podcast talking about your bucket list, but uh, you want to just give us some idea of some of the things, just briefly, some of the things that you would have on that bucket list.
Sure, of course. I mean, they all kind of, I suppose they all can relate to Canada in a way. So yeah, my main one is to kind of experience like a polar night or a polar day. So where either the sun never goes below the horizon or never comes above. And that kind of idea of complete darkness and silence in some kind of, I suppose, natural landscape is really kind of interesting to me. So I'd love to do that in Norway. There's a place called Tromso, which is on the northern coast. And yeah, that's something that I'm looking to do hopefully later this year, if it's allowed, of course. And the other one is just to see bears in the wild. Like, I mean, this is something I spoke about earlier on, but I just, because they are like the ultimate animal. I feel like this is so weird, just this British guy coming on and talking about bears. But yeah, that's something that I'd love to do. And if that is on a road trip, like I mean, I love road trips, and if I could combine that with going through some amazing landscapes in Canada or northern US, like that would be amazing. Um,
Well, that's great. Again, it's been a pleasure to have you come and share your experiences, and I've been like I said, listening to your podcast, and I find them fascinating, and some of the people that you've had on as your guests. And so anyone who's listening to us now, and when I redo this broadcast, and I'll be putting up your podcast website, and hopefully people will be able to go in. Just lastly, where do you broadcast your podcast on?
Of course, yeah, you can find it on like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Deezer. Essentially, if you put in the Worst Traveler on Google, there's somewhere that has it. It's on like the front page. So yeah. But thank you so much for having me, Derek. I really appreciate it. I've loved it.
All right, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching today. Just to let you know, next week I'll be talking with a representative from I think it's Galway Travel, and we have full line of guests for February coming up as well, talking about Normandy and Juno Beach and places like that. So we look forward to having you tune in to us. So thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.